Welcome to another DragonLance Saga Dungeon Mastering 101 episode. It is Palast Holmes Wealth the 29th. My name is Adam, and today we are building monsters of the mind. Yeah, man. It's all in your mind, man. No, we've all run a villain who ends up feeling like a I read generic as geriatric. Like a generic cartoon bad guy. Someone who sits in a tower, laughs maniacally, and wants to destroy the world just because. But the villains your players will remember 10 years from now aren't the ones with the highest armor class or the biggest damage dice. They're the ones whose philosophies make sense, whose personalities clash directly with the party, and whose choices actively reshape the world around them. Today, we are looking at the architecture of a masterful villain. All right, I would like to take a moment and thank the DL Saga members and Patreon patrons and invite you to consider becoming a member or patron. You can even pick up Dragonlance Media or get $10 signing up to start playing games using my affiliate links. And Dragons of Ash and Twilight, the fan fiction anthology we put together, is still available free in PDF, ebook, and audiobook. It's all at dlsaga.com or in the comments or in the details below. You can see all the links there in the description below. Description is the word I was looking for. All right, let's dive into this because I'm clearly scattered today. There's a lot of really great villains out there in Dungeons and Dragons. But what if you just wanted to create one of your own? What if you wanted one for your home game, for the campaign that you're putting together or you're going to inject for the next series of story arcs for your players? How do you go about that? Well, what I would suggest is making every single villain the hero of their own story, just like the heroes in your game, right? The golden rule of advanced villain design is that nobody thinks that they are the bad guy. As insane as it sounds, as bananas and crazy as it sounds, real world bad guys did not see themselves as bad guys. Like the Hitlers of the world. I don't think he saw himself as evil. It seemed every indication that he really thought he was doing things for the people, the Aryan nation, his German brothers and sisters. But objectively, he was evil as hell. Like he was the most evil person. So when you're thinking about structuring bad guys to pit against your players, don't make them the Snidely Whiplashes. Make them heroes of their own version. Just like in Star Wars where it says it's all from a certain point of view. It's all perspective. From my perspective, you're the bad guy. You're the one that's wrong. That's what we want to really lean into. And you can see it in a couple of the Dragonlance villains that I'm going to be talking about today. Well, one of them anyway. But before I shit on my own point, it is important to make sure that your villains do not see themselves as villains. They're doing what they're doing for a real reason. Now, a villain who does evil simply because it's evil is flat and unengaging. It's the type of villain you expect to, kill as soon as you see them, not someone that's going to be an overarching villain of a campaign. A compelling antagonist has a vision for a better world, a solution to a real crisis, or a code that they refuse to break. Their villainy comes from the methods they use or the extremism of their goals, not solely their perspective on the world. And the more, we're going to get to this in just a second, the more relatable that perspective is, while their actions are unacceptable, the better the villain they are. So the master shift here is give your villain an ideology that the players can almost empathize with. Like they understand why the villain is doing what they're doing and they can see their point, but they don't agree with it. That's when it's when the heroes disagree with the action, but understand the motivation. The moral weight of the campaign will then skyrocket because it's going to force the players to really consider their actions. Are they doing something just as bad as the bad guy? What makes them any better? How do you justify the moral course when your motivation is the same as the villain? Makes it really interesting. So, the 3-tier presence framework. This is what I would suggest in developing your villains, especially when implanting them into your campaign. How do you present them in different ways to the players and when? Well, that's what we're going to get into. An advanced villain shouldn't just show up for a final battle. They must possess long-term structural influence. You build this by layering their presence into your campaign across 3 distinct operational tiers. Number 1, the first tier, is the shadow. This is the low levels. The players don't face the villain. They face the consequences of the villain's ideology. They see a village starved by their tax laws or a cult inspired by their philosophy. They see the shadow of the villain. They don't see the villain. They probably don't even really know the villain's name yet. You can see this with Verminard, right? So Dragons of Deceit, the very beginning of the Dragonlance trilogy, the heroes hear about this weird army. They're seeing evidence of fires on the periphery. People are rumoring dragon men, moving around. But we don't know what's actually happening. We see the devastation that is caused by this dragon army, by Verminard, but we don't ever actually hear his name, especially when you travel over past the Eastwall Mountains and you stop by Quayshu tribe. You see it's completely destroyed, and that's the first time you just get the name. And they're hanging his own people. You just get the name Verminard, and you're like, wow, is this Verminard the one in charge of all of this? Like all this devastation and destruction? So you're seeing the evidence of the villain without ever meeting the villain at all. Stage 2, the voice. Now this is the mid-levels. The villain interacts indirectly with the party, and this is done through intermediate lieutenants, personal missives, or tense social encounters in neutral territory where steel cannot be drawn. So this is the Viewmaster Toda situation. He's working on behalf of Verminard to bring the slaves of Abanasinia down to work in the mines of Pax Tharkaz so they can generate more iron, ultimately create more steel, and ultimately create more weapons so that they can invade and decimate the elves of Kulanisty and own all of Abanasinia. They're operating through an intermediary, Lord Toda, not directly with Verminard, but you're feeling the weight, because by the time you get back from Zaxxaroth to Solace, the Inn of the Last Home is torn down. The dragons that the Dragon High Lord Verminard commands have burnt down nearly every single Valenwood tree. It's just a massive destruction. People, they sit down there and he burned alive a bunch of elven rebels from Kulanisty. Just burned them all at a stake, like a witches. Crazy villainous activity that you never firsthand see, but you see his operators doing it, and his operators become the people you interface with. So you don't want the big bad guy to be out front. You want his henchmen to be out front in the second phase, right? So the first phase is just feeling the presence. The second phase is dealing with henchmen. And the third phase, finally, the fist. This is when they're high level. The direct confrontation. By the time this battle happens, it shouldn't feel like a tactical combat grid. It should feel like the inevitable climax of a personally deep rivalry. With Verminard, in the novels, they face off in Pax Tharkaz. In the adventure modules, they don't actually face him until Thorbarden. So he is an ever-present threat, not just chasing them down as they're running away from Pax Tharkaz with the slaves and refugees, but also he follows them into Thorbarden until they finally meet him face-to-face and have to try to kill him there. That is an epic villain right there. So let's just examine the motivations of Verminard. He is a direct descendant of Huma Dragonbane, the guy who banished Tikhisis in the Second Dragon War. And so in the Third Dragon War. And so in the War of the Lance, the Fourth Dragon War, she corrupts his descendant, the person that banished her, corrupts his descendant into being her cleric, the first official cleric of all, and convinces him that he needs to be her fist and like run all across and decimate not only Abanasinia and the territory from the New Sea to the Straits of Algani, but also eliminate all of the Quillency elves, those paladine worshipping, disgusting elves in the forest. Kill them all. So that's his mandate, and he believes it fervently, and he will execute it perfectly if it weren't for those pesky heroes. So that's a great villain. His legacy is one of heroism. He has been twisted and corrupted in his young life by his parentage, by Takesis, and then created into this form of this villainous monster who genuinely believes what he's doing is right. And he will continue to do these despicable things because he believes he's justified. He's heralding in the gods who have been absent for 350 years. It's pretty powerful. All right. So let's talk about the personality and the flaw factor here about villains. You need to give your villain a distinctive human anchor, even if they're not humans, right? They have to be human to be presented with motivations and directions and desires and needs. So avoid the generic dark overlord traits and focus on specific operational personalities. So are they the mastermind, cold, analytical, and views the players as variables to be accounted for? Are they the zealot, driven by a burning, unshakable faith or duty that was broken by a past failure or a betrayal? I'm sorry, unshakable duty that makes them entirely immune to bribery or negotiation? Or is it the tragic fall? This is the past betrayal. Someone who was once a hero or an ally, but was broken by a past failure or betrayal. So you got your mastermind, your zealot, your tragic fall, and you can come up with a whole handful of these on your own. But these are just some examples of what forces you to make a considered villain and helps you with an archetype like this to fill out their personality, round it out so that it really fits into your campaign and really is a fantastic villain to set apart from your heroes. So the key here, above and beyond anything else, give them a psychological vulnerability. Is it pride? Is it a specific blind spot? Is it a loved one? A villain with a flaw is a puzzle that your players can solve through roleplay. If the players find the flaw, they can work at that flaw. They can needle at it. They can use it as leverage to try to win over the personality. Maybe it's a redemption arc for the villain. Maybe they're just trying to delay him so that they can have someone else do something else while they're drawing the focus on him. Whatever it is, it's going to be something that stops him in his tracks as soon as they start addressing it, because it's such a potent thing, right? Did they lose a son? And now you're going to bring up the son. You know, I mean, there's so many different ways you can go about this. But everyone needs a flaw, especially villains, right? They got to believe what they're doing. They got to, be fervent in that belief. It's got to be relatable, even if the ends are not relatable. The actual motivations are relatable to the heroes. And then they have to have a flaw that the heroes can discover. So the villain's economy of scale is the next bit here. Tie your villain directly into your factions that matter framework. Remember the factions that matter we talked about before? A single villain can be assassinated. A villain who controls an institution, a church, or a political movement is much harder to stop. If the heroes kill the leader without dismantling the ideology or the infrastructure, a new, potentially worse lieutenant will simply rise to their place. This keeps the world reactive and complex. I saw this directly with my fantastic players in the Tyranny of Dragons campaign. They were dealing with Talus the White, and she was convincing them to go and kill Rezmir. She would give them information on how to do that. And they wanted to, but they were like, well, wait a second. If we kill Rezmir for her, is she going to be worse than Rezmir? Do we really want to make a deal with this person? Because we don't know anything about her. She could literally be worse. And we're just eliminating someone that was in her way in order to allow her to have a meteoric rise and then be the next foil for us. And I loved that they were questioning that, because typically people don't. They just think, oh, bad guy's giving me a deal. Let's take the deal and go get the other bad guy. No, you have to consider if Verminard gets killed, the dragon army still exists. There's lieutenants, there's officers, there's other captains, there's other high lords to come in and step in and take their place. If the Seeker movement, if you take out Hedrick, there's still other Seeker leaders that could come in and take his place. So you have to think large scale about this and not just isolate it all down to one individual bad guy. The ideology that they're representing must have resonance in the world, or else they wouldn't have followers. So who is going to step in their in the vacuum that you create by killing them? From all the games you've run on the channels, which has been your favorite villain to play as a GM? And was it unexpected how fun they were to play? Well, because I've run a lot of games, I only really remember recent ones. I really enjoyed that Talus the White and Rezmir characters. Talus the White was kind of a throwaway villain. And no, you know what? No, that's all a lie. Jakku the Night Hag. I've been having a blast playing Jakku the Night Hag, tormenting poor Kithris, and setting them up for an opportunity to kill. But if they don't kill her quick enough, then she pops smoke and leaves. So she's just been torturing them for like months at this point. That's my favorite villain. She has an ideology. She's spreading the will of Morgian, but she has a personal stake because she had a soul that she loved in Lehi, but they took it from her. And now she's got another soul in Kithris, and now she's just tormenting him because he made her go through all those damn hoops. That's my favorite right now. But secondhand would definitely be the Talus the White / Rezmir, the Worm Speaker dichotomy that the players helped infuse. I thought that was fantastic. Yeah, I think that's it for now, because I don't really remember any of the other big villains at this moment, you know. All right, so pardon. The next segment here is going to be a case study. Let's talk about Lord Soth and the High Lords of Krynn. So DragonLance provides an absolute gold standard when it comes to purposeful villain design. So for example, Lord Soth is a great example here. He isn't just terrifying because he's a Death Knight. He's terrifying because he's a walking monument to pride, tragic failure, and the refusal to seek redemption. He could have. He refused. His presence is tragic, it's heavy, and it's deeply atmospheric. It is very Victorian Gothic horror in a high fantasy campaign setting. And it's just brilliant. And it makes perfect sense why the Ravenloft team would want to drag him over, because he's a perfect fit for a Ravenloft type villain. And in Dragonlance, I think he's just a stellar example. You hear about Lord Soth before you ever are going to see him. And it's a terrifying notion to face off against a Death Knight. And when you do see him, he's not just a villain who walks up and starts killing you. He's a villain who lets his henchmen have their way with you. His banshees murder you with their song. He lets you crawl around his castle and he just keeps fucking effing with you the whole time because he can, because he has nothing to fear. He's enjoying torturing you. That's what I love about him. Another, of course, I was just talking about Verminard. I think he is a fantastic villain in the first tier of the Dragonlance Chronicles. I love Verminard as a character. I think the novels gave him way too quick of a death. He definitely should have been around longer. They went a little bit to redeem that with High Lord Skies. But you also have Kitiara. Look, Kitiara, she sees herself as a self-motivated individual, not an evil, snidely whiplash, mustache-curling villain. But she's certainly villainous. She uses people for her own advantage. She will send them to be enslaved. She'll have them beheaded or murdered. She'll pay her people really well, so they're very loyal to her and on time. And she gets her way because of it. She has influence because she's connected to Lord Soth, because she had the cojones to go to Dargard Keep when no one else would do it. And quite frankly, she's a badass. So yeah, when we're introduced to the idea of Kitiara, it's at the very beginning of the Chronicles. So we hear about the tragic fallout between her and Tanis, and the residual passions that Tanis has for her, though conflicted. So we feel her shadow before we ever see her. And we get the vibe about who and what she is. And of course, we're dealing with the dragon army. And then finally, when we do see her, she murders one of the heroes. I mean, she is an ultimate badass as far as a villain goes. And the heroes have to face off against her in a number of different ways throughout the DragonLance Saga. So I think she is just a wonderfully, wonderfully evil villain. So Verminard and Kitiara aren't faceless tyrants. They have clear geopolitical goals, internal rivalries with each other, and personal messy connections to the heroes. Use them as blueprints for how to make an antagonist feel human. Look, they don't have to have a personal relationship with the heroes, but maybe they have personal relationships with people around the heroes. Maybe it's not a personal relationship situation, but it's a tragedy that they had befall them that the heroes also had befall them. Like, for example, their parent died in the plague because they believe the Knights of Solamnia failed to protect the people after the Cataclysm, or because of the Cataclysm. The heroes and the villains suffered that same fate, so now they have the same similar motivations to get back, maybe to punish or to right wrongs, but they're doing it in drastically different ways, which is where the moral ambiguity and the difficulty comes to confront the villain, because you share the same background, you know? There's really great ways of tying this together to make them human and believable. Yeah, I 100% believe with you, Brobarian. Nice name. He is a badass, if that's what BA means. It could be a baker associate. I don't know. All right, so the yes but of negotiating with evil. When your players inevitably try to outsmart, outnegotiate, or manipulate your villain, leverage your advanced yes but mindset. I've been reading through I6 Ravenloft because I'm going to be running that this year, and it says straight up, look, Count Strahd von Zarovich is a genius, so you have to play him that way. When you think of what your players are going to do, how would a genius respond to them? Don't let him make stupid moves. He's smart. He knows when he's in trouble, when he's outnumbered. He knows how to get around the heroes' plans and schemes. Play him up that way. And that's what we really have to think. These villains have to challenge and be a challenge to the heroes. They cannot just be mowed over like grass, or else they're not villains anymore. Make sure the heroes struggle with trying to get to the villain and then facing them down. It has to be a struggle. Look, as soon as Kithris kills Jakku, it's going to be a big freaking deal to him because she's been tormenting him for so long, just out of his reach when he's almost gotten her. Every single time. When he finally gets to, it's going to be earned and it's going to be spectacular. That's what you want the heroes to feel when they finally overcome the villain. Yes, the High Lord will agree to a temporary truce to fight the greater undead threat, but they will use that ceasefire to position their armies perfectly around your home city for when the truce ends. Use the yes, but. Is it the enemy of my enemy is my friend situation? That may be the case, but the enemy is always going to try to outsmart you in the end and defeat you, right? Just like you're going to try to defeat them. Let the villain play the long game, not short-term reactions. Make sure that they have a stake in the world and that they're trying to see that done, and stopping the heroes is just one tiny part, a bump in the road before they can realize their grand vision. Badass indeed. Kiriara is tragically evil, betrayed in the cruelest fashion. Oh my gosh. I hate how she was handled after her death in the Tower of High Sorcery and Legends. I hate how it was handled. Hey, Justin, how you doing? Thanks for tuning in. To you, Dragonlance is the best villains of all high fantasy settings. Saw, Kiriara, Verminard, Raistlin are way more interesting than Sauron. I wholeheartedly agree with you. I would even extend it off to like Fist and Daedalus, the King Priest. Like there's so many incredible villains in Dragonlance. You can even see Lorak as a villain, from a certain point of view. I mean, good people doing things that end up having horrific consequences. That's villainous behavior too. They did it for what they perceived as the best of intention reason, but the road to hell is paved with good intentions, right? That's the saying. So, that's all to say. Use yes, but not yes and when it comes to villain. Use yes, but as a storytelling device, but make sure that you're using that but to put the villain in a position of continued threat to the players. They have to be smart. All right, so the last thing I want to talk about is the DM201 mindset. This is the second to last session I'm going to be doing on DM101. And in this case, the very short example of DM201 courses. So respect your villain's intelligence. Run your major antagonist as if they are as smart, creative, and determined as your players. This is going to feel like you are going against your players in a head-to-head, which is something you don't do in the game. But when it comes to the big bad villain, you have to empower them. They cannot just be mindless monsters. They have to stand against the heroes, because once they're defeated, then the heroes have solved the problem. Whatever the campaign issue is, they're the big bad villain that they're overcoming. Once they've killed them, or defeated them, or jailed them, or whatever the outcome may be, they've succeeded at everything they've been trying to do. So make sure it's epic, meaning make sure the villain is tough as nails. And if the stat block during the encounter isn't living up to it, you owe it to the heroes to make shit up and make them tougher. Add some bonuses if you need to make sure it's a challenging encounter. Don't let the heroes mow over the main villain. You have the power to make it difficult. I'm not saying kill the characters intentionally, but make sure it's a challenge. That's the important part. In 5.5, it's really hard to challenge players, so you have to intentionally do it. Sorry, I'm just looking at my notes here. If the players pull off a brilliant tactical move, the villain won't just throw a tantrum. They will adapt to that brilliant tactical move. They will change their own strategy and target the player's resources or allies. Use the villain smart. A reactive villain makes players' victory feel incredibly well earned, and it will be. Because you want them to get there. You want them to win. You're playing a game because you want the players to have that moment of excitement and catharsis. But you got to make sure it's earned. All right, so the closing takeaway of all of this. A great villain is more than a collection of legendary actions or high stats. They are a philosophical force that demands a response from the heroes. Build them with a rational ideology. Weave their presence into the background layers of your world early on, and let the actions react dynamically to the players' choices. When you give a villain a purpose, you give your campaign a soul. I do think it's that important. So that is what I think about villains and how I would go out to create them and make sure that the heroes struggle, are challenged, not just mechanically, but morally in overcoming the villains. Do it. It'll be great for your players. You think it'd be a fun idea for a villain would be a fellow player? We've had that in the Tyranny of Dragon campaign as well. All right. Well, that is going to wrap up our deep dive into advanced antagonist design. Who is the most compelling villain you've ever run or faced at the table? Did they have a point, or were they just wonderfully evil? Feel free to email me at info@dlsaga.com or leave a comment below. I would like to take a moment and invite you to subscribe to the YouTube channel, ring the bell to get notified about upcoming videos, and click the like button. It all goes to help other Dragonlance fans learn about this channel and its content. Thank you to creator patrons Aaron Hardy and D. Robert Handy, producer patron David Galindo, developer patrons Chris Androu and Sam Ruiz, and all of the YouTube members. This channel is all about celebrating the wonderful world of the Dragonlance Saga, and I hope you'll join in that celebration. Thank you for watching. This has been Adam with Dragonlance Saga, and until next time, Sláinte mhath.